University from the outset. And for now, for help you to understand more about the quality management and international accreditation activities at Vietnamese German University, I would like to introduce the presentations about quality management and international accreditation presented by Mr. Frank Niedermeyer, Head of Department of Higher Education Studies, Centers for Quality Development, University of Potsdam, Germany, and followed by Dr. Nadine, Head of Strategy and Quality Assurance Department, Vietnamese German University. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I hope you can hear me well. And I'm very delighted, also thank you for the invitation to be able to speak to the audience today. I'm very happy for this opportunity. And I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Normally, this is usually always, I guess every speaker says so. The first talk after lunch is the most difficult one. I will try, and I hope that I can get your attention and that you will then afterwards go into a nice weekend. Today, I was asked to talk about quality management and international accreditation. And I'm going to have a look at the European case and the ASEAN case and also draw some comparisons between the two regions. But first of all, my question was, or often I have the feeling that it's not totally clear what is actually accreditation, and in our context now here, what is international accreditation? Is it a review by international professionals, AACSB, you might have heard of them, for engineering and for economics, these two organizations? Is it a review by associations, by regional associations, university associations, for example? In Europe, we have the European University Association, EUA, and in ASEAN, you all know AUN, the ASEAN University Network. Or is it a review by agencies from other countries now, specifically when we talk about international accreditation? There is a lot of different kind of definitions if you look into research and if you look into publications about accreditation. I have here two, one by Lee Harvey, and he says accreditation is the establishment of the status, legitimacy, or appropriateness of an institution, program, or module of study. Accreditation is usually for a limited duration, at which time re-accreditation procedures come into operation. So this is, as you can see, very broad, and I think it kind of gets the main points. And Woodhouse said accreditation is mostly associated with accountability and focuses on a gatekeeper role, evaluating whether something, an institution or program, qualifies for a certain status. And today in my presentation and in our session here, I think we want to kind of have a mixture of these two definitions. So I would say that not all external evaluations are automatically an accreditation. It depends on state regulations if these external evaluations are actually accepted as being accreditations. So for my definition, accreditation is connected to a right to exist for a study program or an institution, to a right to confer a degree, or to a right to practice a profession. It can be still voluntary or mandatory, so there is different countries who are organizing it either by voluntary basis or actually all study programs, for example, have to be accredited. And accreditation can be carried out by government bodies or independent agencies, organizations, which though are commissioned or allowed by the state to implement accreditation. Yes, and I think that's also the case in Vietnam. So some countries do recognize external reviews by international agencies as being accreditation in their own country. So not always when you read accreditation, in my opinion, it is actually accreditation in this definition, which I just made. But let's have a look at the European case first, and afterwards I will go to ASEAN and also to some cooperations between ASEAN and Europe in the area of quality and in the area of harmonization and of quality assurance. If you look at the European higher education area, you can see from here, it's very small probably for you, from 1999, the Bologna process started. We are going to 2015. Different states joined the Bologna process and the European higher education area with that. It is currently 48 states, and you can imagine you see France, you see Germany, Poland, you see Ukraine, Turkey, also Russia. So it's beyond the European Union, and it's a lot of different higher education systems, different languages, different cultures, etc., which are growing together here. So there is the Bologna process. You have probably heard about it already. The main goals of the Bologna process is actually mobility of students, mobility also of university personnel, and of workforce within the area, and also cooperation and exchange between the higher education institutions, and also to strengthen the competitiveness of the HEIs. So it is in the end also about recognition of study programs, recognition of studies in general, so that also students could, for example, change their university during their degree, or also from after a bachelor take a master's in another country. So one of the main issues that are needed to build this kind of common area is that you need trust between the different stakeholders, the different institutions. You need comparability, you need transparency for this. And well, as I just said, you need recognition. While though at the same time, you know that universities are very special organizations. They are usually not top down, where the president could say, this has to happen, for example. In most of the countries. So the thing is that all this has to happen while keeping the autonomy of the higher education institutions themselves. There are different tools and mechanisms for building this common higher education area, which was officially launched in 2010, the European higher education area. You can see there is the logo here on the slide. There is I won't go into detail about all these tools. You can also have a look at more information. There's a very good website actually on the European higher education area. I just wanted to touch upon the European standards and guidelines for quality assurance. Here, the ESG 2015, which is a common framework for quality assurance practices. And then also the European Quality Assurance Registry, the ICAR, which is a common register for quality assurance bodies and agencies in Europe. You can see here, this is the main content of the ESG. You have standards for internal evaluation of HEIs, and you have standards for external evaluation of HEIs. So this is for the agencies, actually, how they implement their reviews, and your standards for external quality assurance agencies as a whole. Meaning, for example, you can see here the criteria of independence, what kind of resources they have to have, and that they are actually also having cyclical EQA. For the universities, you can see that it's about policy for quality assurance, that it's about designing the programs, it's about student-centered learning, which is very important, and also here the cyclical QA. So it's usually all these criteria are very similar actually, and you will probably find some commonalities with your own. One important thing is though to say that the ESG are not standards for quality, but they are standards for quality assurance. So this is a very important difference to make, and they leave a lot of room for the institutions to implement them in their own institutions, in their own context, in their um, very special national context and regional context of the university itself. The registry, the ICAR, and I'm telling you about this because as I said earlier, somehow these agencies who are accrediting, they need to be recognized. So that is the idea also between the European Quality Assurance Registry. The agencies have to register there to apply, and then they undergo an evaluation, and they undergo this evaluation every 5 years. This proves actually that they are in compliance with the ESG, and it's a committee of experts in quality assurance that then decide on this external review if the agency is accepted in the registrar, and these results are made transparent online. Also, ICAR has the DECAR, it's called, the Database of External Quality Assurance Results, which gives institutions and stakeholders in Europe the possibility, the opportunity to have a look at single universities and countries and see which study programs are accredited, for example, and for how long. So this is, for example, if there is an interest of cooperation, you could have a look at this database and see how these institutions, these study programs have been accredited, and you usually also have access to the reports through this website. You can also see that, as I said earlier, 48 countries, that's a lot, and that's a big diversity. And you can also see this in the implementation of the quality assurance systems, the national quality assurance systems. So in green here, you see 28, most of the countries are actually having a fully functional quality assurance system, which has regulated external QA for all HEIs, and these regulations and peer reviews, however they are called, if audit or accreditation, this is very different, but these are all in line and in compliance with the ESG. And you can see that there is then also some yellow countries where not all HEIs are subject to this, the orange countries, which are 7, where the system is not fully aligned to the ESG yet, and 1 country here which has no QA system yet, who are building up the QA system. I'm telling this also to show you later a kind of comparison to your region, to the ASEAN member states, and how quality assurance, external quality assurance is organized there. So let me go a bit more into detail now. From Europe, I go to the national level, and given that it is the Vietnamese German University, and I myself am German, I have the case of Germany, and Dr. Nadine Keegan will later on also give you a bit more detail of actually a program accreditation with a German agency. So the German National Quality Assurance Framework is based on the ESG, clearly. We have regulations in all our 16 Länder, which is the 16 regions in Germany. So there is a treaty and a common regulatory framework, so-called interstate study accreditations treaty, but each of the Länder, each of the regions, so Berlin, for example, is one region, or Brandenburg is another region where University of Potsdam is. They have their own slightly different frameworks because they are adapted to their higher education laws, as higher education is organized on a regional level in Germany. But in general, actually, they all are in compliance with the HG, and there is only really slight differences. Private HEIs have additionally also to undergo a so-called institutional accreditation, which is a kind of state approval. And you can see here we have an accreditation council, which is composed by a majority of HEI representatives. And this accreditation council also has students, federal states also represented, professional practice, agencies, although they don't have a vote, and international experts. This council does the accreditation decisions, and it approves agencies according to the ICAR registration. So if an agency is actually registered with ICAR, they are eligible to be approved to work in Germany. And not all of the ICAR registered, I think it's over 40 agencies are working in Germany or are approved in Germany, but this is also due to language barriers, I think. So the accreditation agencies are actually only conducting the peer review and organizing the peer review on program or system level. A few years back, they were also actually having the decision of accreditation, but this changed in 2017-18. So now they are only in charge of the review itself, and the assessors prepare a report, and the accreditation council does the official decision if accreditation is granted or not. And you can see here that I hope it's big enough for you to see that we have two types of accreditation in Germany. One is the so-called system accreditation, which a university as a whole can have for 8 years. This means that the university shows to the assessors, to the accreditation council, that the university is able to assure the quality of their study programs on their own, so that they have mechanisms and instruments in place to do so, and this is then being reviewed every 8 years by the agencies. And with this system accreditation, the universities have the right to give accreditation to their study programs on their own. And University of Potsdam has this kind of accreditation, for example. The other option you have is to have a program accreditation, also here for 8 years. So this would mean that you have to go to an agency for all your study programs, single study programs. Sometimes you can have a bundle of program accreditations together, and you do the accreditation then with the agency. And there's also a third alternative, which is called alternative procedures. Here, universities are able to propose own formats of accreditation to the accreditation council. This has to be approved by the accreditation council, and the accreditation council monitors this process, and it's kind of an experiment, let's say. And it can happen also here then that these, well, like all other accreditation processes also, that in the end it fails. So just to show you also, there is 10 accrediting agencies operating in Germany. There is 4 of them are discipline-oriented. That means they are specializing in some of the disciplines, and we will see later on here Dr. Nadine, who will tell us about accreditation with ASEAN. It's an accreditation agency which is specialized in the degree programs in the fields of engineering, informatics, computer science, and the natural sciences. But yeah, for example, there's also FIBA for business administration accreditation and others. And then we have the majority of agencies who are not looking at specific disciplines and maybe are also a bit more focusing on the system accreditation I have just introduced to you, for example. University of Potsdam is working together with ACRI here in this case. So let's jump a few thousand kilometers over to ASEAN. Um, so just to show you also here, it's also a very diverse region. It's not as many countries as in the European higher education area, but also different languages, different systems, different traditions and cultures. And also in ASEAN, there is an harmonization process of integrating higher education systems. You can see here also there's different tools for credit transfer, for the qualification reference framework, and also an ASEAN quality assurance framework, the ACAF. You might have heard about it already. And you probably also well know the ASEAN University Network AUNQA initiative. So you can see also here, quality and quality assurance is also one main pillar for building a common higher education space. And the ACAF is very similar, I would also say, to the ESG. So it has standards for a quality assurance agency. It has standards for the process of external quality assurance. It has standards for the internal quality assurance. And differently to the ESG, we have principles of national qualifications frameworks. So also some guidelines on how qualifications frameworks should actually look like and should be implemented. And just to show you also the diversity of the different countries here in ASEAN, you have some countries which have accreditation or EQA on program level. You have some countries who have it on institutional level. You have some countries who have it on both levels. And also there's the differentiation then between compulsory accreditation and voluntary accreditation. So you can see here that in Malaysia, for example, the institutional level is voluntary, and you can, for example, also get a self-accreditation status in Malaysia. So that's similar to Germany, although in Germany it's compulsory actually to at least have one of the two accreditation options I just introduced to you. And this is a bit older. You can see here in 2016, or when the actually study was made here, you have also Vietnam with the institutional level, and nowadays you also have the program level. Sorry that this is not updated in this case. But yes, generally this was just to show you that the systems are very different, but still they are or can be in line with the regional framework. So what do we learn out of this? So I think just generally that both ASEAN and Europe are in the process of regionalization, and also I would say this is also for Europe. It's sometimes it sounds like well, we say that the European higher education area is established, but as you saw earlier, this does not mean that we are already at the final goal there yet, but surely we are moving towards that. And that's, I would say, it's also similar in ASEAN. And the similar tools are used. So there's a common quality assurance framework in both regions. And there is this big differentiation also of the different QA systems and different development statuses. The difference is, I would say, that the ASEAN harmonization process is a bit more decentralized and more bottom up. You have kind of competing systems. There's different credit transfer systems, for example. And there is also not kind of monitoring, political monitoring process at the moment, which in Europe you have, I think, every 3 years a ministerial conferences between the 48 states where they look at the implementation of the Bologna process and set also new goals and new things to achieve. And here you can see a kind of difference in the more clear political mandate, I think, in Europe than in ASEAN, and also more clear political follow-up in this case. In ASEAN, you don't have a registry for QA agencies to support the recognition of the different agencies. And Europe does not have a comparable regional assessment scheme such as AUNQA. The European University Association has a institutional assessment or evaluation scheme, but it is not so widely used as AUNQA, and it's also not on program level. If we look at what ASEAN and Europe are actually cooperating in this area of a common higher education space, of regionalization of higher education, you can see here, you probably have heard of SHARE. SHARE is looking at a general policy dialogue between the ASEAN countries and between Europe and ASEAN. It is looking at qualifications frameworks and quality assurance. So they have supported the ICAR, for example, and there has been also reviews of quality assurance agencies in ASEAN according to the ICAR. And some of you might have also taken part in some of the conferences or trainings that have been implemented under this common project. They're looking at the credit transfer system, and they're also looking at student mobility. So there have been also, I think, quite a lot of funding for supporting students in their mobility in ASEAN and also to Europe. The good news is SHARE had actually been ended this year, but now there is finally the go for a SHARE 2. So this will start January 2021 and end in 23. So look out for any possibilities of exchange, cooperation, and training in this regard. You will hear from the SHARE consortium, I think, in the next few months what will happen there. I wanted to also give you a quick overview of a project that has been implemented or coordinated by University of Potsdam, Asian QA. It started in 2011. And we were also supporting, together with DAD, the German Academic Exchange Service. Many of you probably know the German Rectors Conference also, and ACAN. It's the network of quality assurance agencies in ASEAN. ENQA is the network of quality assurance agencies in Europe. AUN and CMRI, which is the regional center for higher education development of CMEO. So these 7 partners all together were also looking at supporting the creation of a common higher education space with training, capacity building in the area of internal quality assurance and external quality assurance in the first phase, and then concentrating from the second phase on, from 2014, for internal quality assurance, where we have implemented different trainings and multiplication trainings also for quality assurance. And 2019, so last year, this project as a project actually ended, and there has been the setup of the ASEAN Quality Assurance Association. You can see the link here, and I invite you to have a look at their website. It grew from our alumni of these trainings, and it's a practitioners network to support each other, to exchange, and to get to know each other's practices. So every year there is a forum. Last year, actually, it was the first one, the Asian QA Forum in Hanoi, so not too far from you. You can see I think we had almost 300 participants from all over ASEAN joining this forum of 3 days. In this year, this should have been in the Philippines, in Manila, hosted by the University of the Philippines. But yeah, due to the pandemic, like many things, this has been then shifted to online, and there have been already 3 series. And I cordially invite you also to join this final series of the online forum on 25th and 27th November. Online via Zoom. The registration still has to be launched, but yeah, please save the date. This is, I think, an opportunity for everyone also during this pandemic to still have the international exchange on the topic of quality assurance. Yeah, so I think this will be very, very interesting as it's also actually looking at quality assurance in these difficult times. How do you actually do quality assurance of online teaching and learning, for example? Yes, I think with that, I'm almost to the point for my section of the presentation, and I would, yes, thank you very much at this point, and I would hand the floor over to Dr. Nadine Kagan for the second part of the presentation, which will be looking at the experience of VGU with the accreditation of ASEAN.
Yes, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My colleague, Mr. Frank Niedermeyer, just introduced me. I'm the head of Strategy and Quality Management Department at VGU, and today I'd like to share our experience with international accreditation with the agency ASEAN from Germany. So this slide firstly shows the internal process of VGU of preparation for and conduct of accreditation. As we are running our programs at the beginning, at the first 6 years, together with a German partner, we have to transfer our programs to VGU. And this will be done in an extensive program review, which includes a market survey and an internal and an external audit workshops where we invite internal and external stakeholders to review extensively on our programs. The next step then is to prepare the program documents. I'm coming to this all later, what this will include. Then the third bigger step is to contact the agency, in this case ASEAN, and negotiate the contract with them. The fourth big step was then to prepare and to submit the self-assessment reports. So one report for each study program. The fifth big step was then passing through the peer review. So the peers, ASEAN sent peers to visit us at VGU. That was last year before the COVID travel restrictions were introduced. And they were here at VGU to do the on-site review. And the last step then, it's more not an active but a passive step. We would receive the accreditation decision from the agency and will then have to send some more evidence and prepare more. But I'm coming to this during my presentation. So the first step for preparation of the accreditation is the program review. So, and the very first step is to conduct a survey respectively to discuss with focal groups to answer specific questions on the labor market demand, on the interest of potential study candidates, on academic quality, as well as on legal and administrative effectiveness. And then with these results, we're going to have our first internal program review workshop where we invite our students, staff, academic and also administrative, and our German partners. So for example, the program director of a German university, also lecturers, flying faculty who are coming to us. And with these results, after the workshop, we will then invite to a larger workshop. That is then the external workshop, where we invite stakeholders, for example, where we invite representatives from the industry, or from academia, from other universities, and also we invite alumni from VGU, as well as students and staff from VGU. And the outcome of these workshops then is a possible modification of the program profile and the curriculum. Because after the transition of a program from Germany to VGU, we need to adjust the program to the Vietnamese market based on the results of our survey and based on the discussions during the workshops. What else did we do for preparation of accreditation with ASEAN? We organized 2 in-house workshops to prepare the persons in charge for the accreditation process. The first one, we were lucky to invite, with World Bank loan, the director of ASEAN, who gave us a 3-day workshop on quality assurance, how to establish a systematic approach to quality management. In this workshop, we received specific information and valuable tips from an insider on how to best prepare for accreditation with ASEAN. The second workshop that we had on site at VGU was from Dr. Nguyen Kim Yung from the Nam Viet Institute of Education Sciences here in Ho Chi Minh City. And from her, we received very good input on how to best design a study program. So our academic coordinators, mainly in charge for the transition accreditation process, as well as those who are going to do it in the future, were invited to these workshops. The third step was then the preparation of documents to be submitted to ASEAN. These include a program concept and profile, the curriculum, of course, the intended learning outcomes, a very important point, the examination regulation. So before the transition, the program run here at VGU followed the German examination regulation. And so now we had to prepare VGU own examination regulation for each of the to be transferred and accredited program. Then, of course, very important is the module catalog, which includes all the module descriptions of all the modules taught in that program, including all the electives. Thesis guidelines to help the students writing their final thesis was one of the documents, as well as a list of all faculty including their CVs and other academic stuff. For ASEAN, we had to submit the program documents together with a self-assessment report, but other agencies may ask for those documents in advance. For example, now we will go with ACWIN, also one of the mentioned agencies in the former presentation, and they require us to submit these documents in advance before we submit the self-assessment report. We have we've been asked many times, what does it cost to go for an international accreditation, which may also be interesting for you. So we made a slide for this. Of course, it depends on the type of accreditation and the number of study programs to be accredited by the agency. So in our case, the VGU has undertaken a program accreditation and chosen a cluster procedure. Concretely, there were 3 study programs to be accredited, 1 bachelor program and 2 master programs. And the total invoice, which included the travel and accommodation of the peers to do the review, amounted to a little bit more than 700,000 Vietnamese dong. Then it came to the greatest part of the accreditation preparation. That was the submission of the self-assessment reports. So in our case at VGU, the drafting of the program-related parts of this report was a task of the academic coordinators. So of those lecturers that are running the program here at VGU. And there were also other parts of the self-assessment report that are more in general, like on quality assurance or on the organization, on financial matters. There, the Department of Strategy and Quality Management, especially the Quality Assurance Office, a unit within the department, was in charge of. The academic coordinators were in charge of preparing the program documents. Of course, they got the support from the other lecturers, for example, when they wrote their module descriptions. This was not done by the academic coordinators on their own, of course. The QA office supported also a lot in the accreditation process. For example, it initiated the start of the process. So the QA office has the plan on transition and accreditation and knows when to start such a project, when to trigger this, when to remind, when to start the process. Then the QA office provided introduction presentations and information material to the persons in charge. The office organized a peer review. It drafted the official statements to the agency, the answer of the accreditation transition, the statements to the fulfillment of the requirements and recommendations, for example. And of course, a very important duty is to maintain good contact with the agency throughout the process. We've been asked who should participate at the on-site visit. So ASEAN asked us to invite many stakeholders. The peer group that visited us last year in, I think it was November, or late October, beginning of November, consisted of 2 professors and 1 industry representative. Normally, there would have also been a student representative, but they could not find somebody to go with the other 3 peers. So these 3 peers met our presidential board, met the deans of the faculty, met the academic coordinators of the programs under review, the heads of department who were involved in the assessment, the quality assurance staff, students from the programs under review, representatives from students' organizations, graduates from VGU from those programs, lab engineers, teaching staff, from all subject areas of the programs, as well as industry partners. So this peer review visit took place 2 days, from morning to evening, and constantly the peers were meeting these stakeholders to discuss in peer groups about the quality of the programs. So what were the most important challenges that we faced in our first bundle accreditation? So the writing of a self-assessment report was breaking new grounds for most of the involvees. And so we organized as a solution trainings for enhancing the skills for this new task for the people who were in charge of and other interested staff. Sometimes it was necessary sometimes necessary information and documents were not provided in time. This happens always and everywhere. So we tried to push kindly, for example, by dropping into the offices and saying, hey, what's going on? And this really worked instead of writing emails, for example. Another challenge was that the Europe Credit Transfer System, the ECTS, needed to be aligned with the Vietnamese system. So the two systems differ quite strongly from each other, and we discussed this topic among the colleagues to find solution. And another greater challenge was that the workload had certain peaks. That is also normal, e.g. by having to stick to the deadlines. And it worked quite well to get everything on time, because the people in this time prioritized their work. What are the lessons learned for a successful accreditation? It does not work. So at the beginning, we trained our staff to get the skills for the accreditation process. We provided, so we are the QA office, we provided all necessary information material for the persons in charge. It's important that for the accreditation, all official documents like examination regulation or module catalog are prepared, respectively revised. Then we found out that it's good to communicate internal deadlines to receive information documents on time. With internal deadlines, I mean, if the external deadline to the agency for submission is the 30th of September, that we communicate internally that the deadline was 31st of August. So that helped us to stick to the deadline, although some did not submit to the deadline given by us. I suggest to plan no less than 6 months for the internal accreditation process. It takes time to write a self-assessment report. It takes time to prepare the relevant documents. So take the time. 6 months or longer should be appropriate. And of course, important is to balance the work sharing among the involved internal stakeholders. The academic coordinators cannot write a whole module catalog, but they can assign the task for each lecturer to write their module descriptions and so to compile the catalog. Just one example. So with this slide, I'm going to end my presentation with sharing our insights of our first international accreditation with ASEAN. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for your sharing, Mr. Frank Niedermeyer and Dr. Nadine Kagan. As a research-oriented university, it should be a big omission if the research topics were not mentioned in this event. So please welcome Professor Rainer Ander, TU Darmstadt, Germany. He's going to share with us about materializing the image of a research-oriented university. Good morning, Professor Rainer Ander. Yes.
Good morning, and hello to everybody.
Yes. Could you hear us well?
Yes, I hear you perfectly well.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we could hear you well as well.
Excellent.
Yes.
So first, I would like to thank you very much to invite me for this very remarkable conference. And it's a big honor for me to give this presentation on materializing the image of a research-oriented university. My name is Rainer Anderl, and I'm a full-time professor at Technische Universität Darmstadt. And here in this slide, I have just listed an overview about my ecosystem where I'm performing research. First, of course, I'm a professor at Technische Universität Darmstadt. I'm also the chairman of the board of directors of the VGU consortium in Germany. Then I'm acting as president of the Academy of Science and Literature in Mainz. I'm also a member of the National Academy of Science and Engineering, and I'm the chairman of the Research Council of the national initiative called Industrie 4.0. So in my presentation, I will give you an overview about the materializing of the image of a research-oriented university from these various perspectives. First, let me just give you an insight into our research work of my research group. I'm teaching computer integrated design at Technische Universität Darmstadt. And the four main topics are information modeling, distributed and collaborative engineering, virtual product development, and of course, very important is the research on Industrie 4.0. Now, what is the research and development situation in Germany? Per year in Germany, there is a total investment in R&D of nearly 105 billion euros. You can multiply the number of euros by 1.15, then you have the same number in dollars, in US dollars. The number of employees in R&D are around 707,000. And the percentage of the investment in R&D with respect to the gross domestic product, GDP, is 3.13%, around 3%, a little bit more than 3%. Now, in Germany, we have about 640 universities. The total number of students is 1.9 million students. The total number of graduates each year is around 512,000. And the staff employed in higher education is around, as I mentioned before, 737,000. And the numbers here are from 2010 of our national statistics. So let me explain now the research and development system in Germany, the scientific research and development system in Germany. We have quite a lot of research and development performed by the universities, and the universities are organized in the German National Conference of the Universities Rectors. And these 640 universities are organized there. Then besides the universities, we have pure research organizations For instance, like Fraunhofer, Max-Planck-Gesellschaft, Leibniz-Gesellschaft, Helmholtz-Gesellschaft, then the National Research Institute for Artificial Intelligence, and many others. The idea is that they are dedicated purely to research and also development, but they have no teaching tasks. However, in most cases, the directors of these institutes in these organizations are at the same time a professor in one of the German universities. So there is a strong relation between the research organizations and the universities. And then we have another important facet of research and development. This is being performed by the so-called scientific academies, such as Accreditation, Leopoldina, and 8 further scientific academies. One of these 8 academies is the Academy of Science and Literature in Mainz. So, having this in mind, I would like to give you an overview now about the research institutes and the academic landscape. So I have listed here DIK, which is my research institute at Technische Universität Darmstadt. And then we have quite a number of Fraunhofer institutes, more than 60 Fraunhofer institutes, which are located all over Germany. Then we have also quite a high number of Max Planck institutes, about 50, and they are also located all over Germany. Leibniz institutes, very similar. The difference between Fraunhofer, Max Planck, and Leibniz institutes are Fraunhofer institutes are typically dedicated to engineering science and natural science. Max Planck institutes are typically dedicated to fundamental research in natural sciences, and Leibniz institutes are institutes performing fundamental research in the humanities and in the humanities and social sciences, of course. And then we have the big research institutes, which are organized in the so-called Helmholtz associations. And they are about 25 Helmholtz institutes all over Germany. But the difference compared to Fraunhofer, Max Planck, and Leibniz institutes is that they are much, much bigger. For instance, our Helmholtz institutes for heavy ion research, which is located in Darmstadt, they have around 1,000 researchers employed. Very similar in Aachen, in Karlsruhe, and some other places. So, and then we have the academies. One is Accreditation, which is located in both places, here in Munich and also here in Berlin. And then we have the Leopoldina, which is our Academy for Natural Sciences. Accreditation is for engineering and technology. And the 8 academies which are typically dedicated to humanities and social sciences. They have also components for engineering sciences and for arts in particular. And they are also located in several places here in Germany. So if you have a look now to Germany, then you see quite a strong infrastructure in institutes which are focused purely on research and development, besides the universities. So you should always have in mind that in Germany, a lot of research has been performed at universities, but furthermore, also a lot of research is performed by the research institutes and the academies. So now let me come back to my department. And I have here just listed the history of my department and how we developed in the last 25 years. When I started my institute, my professorship in Darmstadt, Technische Universität Darmstadt was called Technische Hochschule Darmstadt, which is the old name of the university. And then very soon after I was called to Darmstadt, I was selected as a member in the scientific community for product development, the Berliner Kreis. Then in 1997, Technische Universität Darmstadt changed the name from Technische Hochschule Darmstadt to Technische University Darmstadt. In 2003, we have become a member in the international community for computer integrated design, which was called PACE. In PACE, about 50 universities around the world are members. Then in 2006, I was elected as a member of the Academy of Science and Literature in Mainz. And in 2009, I became a member as an academician in ACATEC. Then I was also selected to the WIGAP, which is the scientific community for product development and product creation. And our last membership was the membership in the Research Organization for Smart Engineering. So now let me give an introduction into the profile of Technische Universität Darmstadt. And I'm very proud to explain that Technische Universität Darmstadt has become the first autonomous university in Germany. This happened in 2005. And that meant that, of course, Technische Universität Darmstadt has a public funding. I will report about the public funding later. But compared to a non-autonomous university, all the decisions of Technische Universität Darmstadt, including how we are spending our funding, our public funding, how we are calling professors, and how we are defining our research profile, has been dedicated to the university itself. And once a year, the presidential board of the Technische Universität Darmstadt has to report to the parliament of the state of Hessen, because the state of Hesse is sponsoring Technische Universität Darmstadt. But very important is that we can draw all our decisions ourselves. And this is a very big advantage in the German university system. So let's come back to the facts and figures. Technische Universität Darmstadt consists of 13 faculties and 5 interdisciplinary study areas. In total, we are performing 113 study programs. Currently, we have 25,170 students, where 18% of our students are foreign students. Each year, we have about 4,118 graduates graduating with a master's degree and 431 PhDs. In total, Technische Universität Darmstadt has employed 308 professors, 2,583 scientific research assistants, 1,909 members of the administrative staff, and 164 appendices. So now to the budget. Technische Universität Darmstadt has a budget of around 250 million euros funded by the state of Hesse. In addition, that is important. About 170 million euros are coming from third parties. And this is typically what we call our research funding. And here you see our increasing curve of this third-party research funding, which has been given to Technische Universität Darmstadt. In addition, we receive about 26.5 million euros joint federal state-financed funding for higher education. And our floor space is around 300 and 900,000 square meters. And we have about 160 buildings for teaching and research. Let me here explain that the task of Technische Universität Darmstadt, which has been written in the university law of the state of Hesse, is threefold. First, teaching. Second, research. And third, technology transfer and knowledge transfer. This is important. So we have to fulfill these three tasks: teaching, research, technology, and knowledge transfer. And in our profile, we are running 11 important collaborative research centers, which are funded by our German National Research Foundation, Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft DFG. In addition, 5 research training groups, then sponsored by the state of Hesse. We have one so-called Löwe Excellence Research Center. This is a big research center sponsored with about 6.5 million euros each year within the next 7 years. In addition, 7 Löwe Excellent Research Areas. Here, the funding is about 2 million per year, again for 7 years. And in addition, we have a joint federal state funding in our research center Athene. Athene is the name of our Center for IT Security. TU Darmstadt, in close collaboration with the Fraunhofer Institutes in Darmstadt, we have 3 Fraunhofer Institutes in Darmstadt, is one of the hotspots of IT security in Germany. So, let's come to the materializing of the image of a research-oriented university. What are we doing with research and which research are we performing? First, we have a strong research profile consisting of 6 important research areas. Of course, we are doing much more research, but these 6 research areas are pretty much visible all over Germany, Europe, and the world. The first topic in research is cybersecurity. I just mentioned our center, which is called Athene. Then internet and digitalization. In this research activity, for instance, all our Industry 4.0 research activities are implemented. Then a further third one is called material to production innovation. And yes, TU Darmstadt is also a very important center for 3D printing or additive manufacturing. Then the fourth one is called thermofluids and interfaces. Here we are doing research with respect to thermofluids, in particular aiming at nanotechnologies. Then we are involved in future energy systems and even more important, particle beams and matter. And here I should mention that we have a close collaboration with the Helmholtz Center. This is one of the big research centers which is been sponsored by the German government, and it's located in Darmstadt, and it's dealing with heavy ion research. And there the research center for particle beams and matter has been created. What I would also like to mention is that we are very strong with respect to the infrastructure for information and communication technology. Yes, we are operating our own high-performance computing system with about 2.4 petaflops, which is quite fast high-performance computing system. What is also very important is, and this is how we are materializing our research, all our research results are directly being implemented in the study programs. This is important. Research is driving the updating of our study programs. So the students who are coming to Darmstadt, they can be sure that the content of our study programs is dedicated to the newest research results. As I mentioned here, research results are directly mapped into the study programs. And of course, technology and knowledge transfer is also very important at Technische Universität Darmstadt. We have a lot of partnerships, and in particular, we are performing so-called strategic partnerships with companies in Germany like Merck, like Deutsche Bahn, like Continental, which is a very big automotive supplier, with Bosch, also a very big automotive supplier, and Siemens. Then we have established so-called cooperative labs. These are labs which are driven on one hand by Technische Universität Darmstadt, and on the other hand by an industrial company. In that case, it's Merck, the Merck lab. It's in particular dedicated to chemistry. And we have also a cooperative research lab together with Rolls-Royce for developing the next generation of aerospace turbines. So, what is the strategy of Technische Universität Darmstadt? And here I have used as an example the strategy which we are using to transfer our research results in the area of Industry 4.0 to the industry. But in the same manner, we are using a similar strategy in all other cases. First, and this is very important, we have our research and development labs. These are more or less small labs where about 5 to 10 researchers are doing a joint research, and they are located in our institutes, for instance, in my institute. And typically, each professor has one research lab. And let me just explain you a little bit about the German system. We are distinguishing between the universities, or in particular the research universities, and the so-called universities of applied sciences. The difference is that a professor in a research university has the duty to teach 8 hours per week. 8 hours per week. In a university of applied science, a professor has the duty to teach about 18 hours a week, which is much more than the double. Now, what does this mean? This does not mean that the professors of research universities have more free time. This means that the professors of research universities have also the duty to perform research. And if we are calling a professor at Technische Universität Darmstadt, typically in the assignment contract, there is clearly listed what a professor has to do with respect to teaching, but also with respect to research, and also, of course, technology and knowledge transfer. So this you should always keep in mind. And therefore, nearly each professor has its own research lab. And here in the research lab, we are really creating fundamental research results. If the fundamental research results have been validated and verified, then we are upscaling the fundamental research results into our demonstration and learning centers. And yes, we have a couple demonstration and learning centers at Technische Universität Darmstadt. I have just picked out here the demonstration and learning center, which is called Smart Factory. Yes, we have our own factory, which you can see here in the slide. And here, for instance, we have implemented the research results of Industry 4.0 for manufacturing systems. So you can have a look to the newest technology with respect to Industry 4.0 in our smart factory. If the demonstration and learning centers are successful and we are aware about a big demand from industry, then we are upscaling to the next step to our competence and transfer center. That means that besides demonstrating, we are also offering courses to, on one hand, the students, but also to the industry for continuous education. And yes, industrial members are coming to our universities and they are receiving an updated qualification with respect to the newest innovation. And even more, if industry is then further developing their innovation, then we are also offering that they can just try out their new innovation in our demonstration environment. So we are offering to the industry to have a setup as a testing environment in the university, because then it's much cheaper compared to try it out in an industrial production environment. So this is just our strategy, and this strategy has proven very successful because our research results, in particular for the fundamental research, is not vanishing in one of our archives, but the research results are directly brought to technology and knowledge transfer and made available for a wide audience, for the industry, for the economy, for the society. And we think that this is very important. And by the way, we are also collaborating, of course, not only with industrial companies, but also, for instance, with the trade unions here in Germany, with the organizations of the society and so forth. Yeah, now let me just explain another important outcome. And this is explained here in this chart. We ordered a study to DIW Econ in 2012. And in this study, we were interested if the impact of Technische Universität Darmstadt is quantifiable. And it was quantifiable. And the experts of DIW Econ found out in 2012 that the investment of the state of Hesse is about 250,000 euros per year. If this is paid back to on one hand the state of Hesse, and on one hand also on a national level in Germany. And here are the results. The direct return on investment is a plus of 60% to the state of Hesse, and it's a plus of 160% on the national level. So if you are using these numbers, and if you are estimating a similar behavior in all other research universities, then you can get a feeling about how strong the materialization of research to the industry, to the economy, and in particular to the society is here in Germany. So let me conclude. A research-oriented university has a strong impact on the added value for both the regional and also the national level. A research-oriented university is based on the unity of freedom and of research and teaching. Strategies are continuously needed and updated to successfully implement research, teaching, and technology transfer. The international visibility is also an important success factor. And to summarize, research-oriented universities are an important contribution to ensure the welfare for the society. So let me end with a very wise phrase from one of our philosophers, which is Georg Christoph Lichtenberg. He was a German scientist, author, and philosopher. And he said, I cannot say whether things will get better if we change. What I can say is they must change if they are to get better. So in that sense, thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer more questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ander. As you may know, highly international recognitions of study programs is viewed to be of pivotal importance for VTU. So to see how they are developed and transferred from German university to VTU's owned, please welcome Dr. Hà Thúc Viên, Vice President of VTU, for his presentation on program development following the principles of international QA standards in higher education and program transition process. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon. May I switch my presentations? I will speak in Vietnamese because I want to not just focusing on about the program developments, but I want to give you very overviews the concept, the principle behind to develop VTU, and that concept and principles strongly serve academic development at the university, including the study program. Since yesterday afternoon until now, you already see different case, even international, national, and university level, from the governance, from the policies, from finance, research, etc., or quality assurance. So there are many points in my presentations will more or less repeat, but not in the same way. Yeah, and then since yesterday we talked about the collaboration between German and Vietnamese for VGU, but what kind of collaborations or cooperations is still not clear yet to you, I am sure for that. But now we are all participants, almost participants of Vietnamese. So let I talk in Vietnamese, and then we have to coming translator, so that's not so problem with our colleagues, not who can speak Vietnamese a little bit. Thank you. Cái
này là moving forward thầy. Mở slide tiếp theo.
Mở slide tiếp theo rồi hả? Ok. Good. Trường Đại học Việt Đức á, là một cái dự án mà trong cái bài phát biểu của giáo sư Theisler hôm qua đó, ông nói về cái hợp tác giữa Việt Nam và Đức trong cái dự án này. Đây là một cái trường hợp rất đặc biệt. Nhìn ở góc độ so sánh quốc tế. Nó là một cái dự án mà hợp tác giữa một quốc gia với một quốc gia đối tác để hình thành một cái đại học. Nó rất khác với cái xu thế mà quốc tế hóa và giáo dục xuyên quốc gia. Mặc dù là một cái dự án đại học hợp tác giữa hai quốc gia, nhưng mà nó là nhiều cái bên liên quan khác nhau. Thì ở đây đó thì khởi đầu của cái dự án này đó là cái sáng kiến giữa chính phủ Việt Nam, đó là thông qua Bộ Giáo dục Đào tạo và Ban Hessen, là để xây dựng một số cái đại học đạt cái chuẩn mực và chất lượng của Cộng hòa Liên bang Đức. Thì bên cạnh hỗ trợ một số trường đại học thì trong đó có cái ý tưởng là thành lập cái trường đại học Việt Đức. Và bởi vì là cái ý tưởng của Hessen và cái ý tưởng của chính phủ Việt Nam và chính sách Việt Nam, cái chương trình phát triển đại học Việt Nam ấy, nó gặp nhau ở một cái điểm là chính phủ Việt Nam cũng muốn xây dựng một số cái trường đại học có chất lượng xuất sắc. Thì kể cả cung và cầu nó đều gặp nhau ở một cái điểm như thế. Thì bắt đầu là cái sự ra đời của trường đại học Việt Đức. Và khi mà cái trường đại học Việt Đức được thành lập đó, thì cái quy mô càng ngày nó càng lớn hơn. Thì cái sự tham gia của chính phủ liên bang bắt đầu. Nên đến hiện nay, tại sao chúng tôi nói là cái hiệp định ba bên là thế? Tức là ba bên có nghĩa là bên chính phủ Việt Nam, bên Cộng hòa Liên bang Đức là bao gồm Hessen và cuối cùng là chính phủ liên bang. Thì ba bên này cái chính đó, cái cách hợp tác ở đây đó là phía Đức sẽ hỗ trợ Việt Nam về phát triển cái phần học thuật, bao gồm các chương trình đào tạo, các đội ngũ giáo sư và phát triển cái hệ thống quản trị, bao gồm các chuyên gia. Và chính phủ Việt Nam có cái trách nhiệm là đầu tư vào cái việc là xây dựng cơ sở hạ tầng và vận hành nhà trường. Thì để thực hiện cái việc này đó thì phía Đức có một số cái tổ chức thực hiện, bị bộ không thể thực hiện trực tiếp được. Thì ở cấp liên bang thì có là cơ quan trao đổi hàn lâm Đức, DDAD, thì chắc ở đây anh em mà học ở Đức về hoặc là nhiều người biết tới DDAD, tức là cái cơ quan trao đổi hàn lâm. Ở phía Hessen thì có cái tổ chức là hỗ trợ đại học thế giới là VUS, đúng không? Để thúc đẩy cái việc mà phát triển đào tạo và nghiên cứu tại trường Đại học Việt Đức ấy, thì có cái consortium mà hồi nãy cái giáo sư Ander vừa báo cáo về cái kinh nghiệm mà materialize cái vấn đề nghiên cứu ở Đại học Đức ấy, là chủ tịch consortium này. Và consortium này nó gồm hơn 40 trường đại học, trong đó có 9 cái đại học kỹ thuật hàng đầu của Đức họ tham gia vào. Đó. Và họ được xem như là cái academic backbone của trường Đại học Việt Đức. Đây là một trong những cái điểm rất là quan trọng để mà chúng ta phát triển khi mà hợp tác với một cái quốc gia khác về học thuật. Nên ở đây là chúng tôi tiếp cận có tính hệ thống, không tiếp cận là đơn lẻ. Đó. Và bên cạnh đó thì nó có cái tổ chức hiệp hội những người bạn hỗ trợ và giúp đỡ trường Đại học Việt Đức. Thì một nhóm những cái chuyên gia, những cái giáo sư, những cái nhà chính trị của Đức họ tham gia vào trong cái dự án này, thì họ thiết lập một cái cơ quan như thế. Và cái cơ quan này là họ tập trung vào để tìm kiếm những cái nguồn tài trợ, và trên cơ sở đó thì họ hỗ trợ học bổng cho sinh viên, hỗ trợ các hoạt động nghiên cứu và các cái hoạt động hội thảo, hội nghị, v.v. Và cái đây là một trong những cái đặc trưng của cái hệ thống đại học Đức, và thường phần lớn các trường đại học Đức đều có cái tổ chức này cả. Và thường họ là những cái alumni, họ đứng ra họ chủ trì như thế, đúng không? Và một cái đối tác nữa cũng rất là quan trọng, đó là Ngân hàng Thế giới. Ngân hàng Thế giới đóng một cái vị trí rất quan trọng trong cái dự án này. Tức là cung cấp cái nguồn vốn vay với lãi suất ưu đãi cho phát triển giáo dục. Và đây là một trong những cái cam kết của Ngân hàng Thế giới với Chính phủ Việt Nam để nhằm thực hiện cái kế hoạch cải cách giáo dục Đại học Việt Nam năm 2006-2020. Thì cái nguồn vốn vay này sẽ tập trung vào cái đầu tư vào xây dựng cơ sở hạ tầng, đầu tư vào xây dựng cái hệ thống quản trị. Đó. Nên hôm qua đây mà các anh chị thấy những cái bóng dáng của những cái tòa nhà, và đồng thời đó là cái physical thing thôi. Đó, và kể cả cái quan trọng nữa đó là cái phần xây dựng cái cấu trúc quản trị các cái chính sách học thuật, mà những cái bài báo cáo hôm qua đây từ trường Đại học Việt Đức nó đều có từ cái component, tức là thành phần 1 và 2, tức là chính sách và khung quản trị. Và trong đó có phát triển đội ngũ nhà giáo, phát triển cơ sở hạ tầng phòng thí nghiệm. Đó. Bởi vì để mà chúng ta triển khai các cái chương trình đào tạo theo cái tiêu chuẩn Đức ở Việt Nam ấy, và được cấp bằng ở ngoài lãnh thổ Việt Nam, thì cái cơ sở hạ tầng phục vụ đào tạo nó rất là quan trọng. Tôi sẽ nói trong cái phần tiếp theo. Đó. Nên ở đây đối với Đại học Việt Đức thì chúng tôi không phải chỉ là 3 đối tác nữa, mà 4 đối tác và kể cả các cái đơn vị hỗ trợ nữa. Nên là đây là một dự án đại học, 2 quốc gia đối tác nhưng mà rất nhiều cái stakeholder. Đây là một cái đặc trưng của cái dự án trường Đại học Việt Đức và cái cách hợp tác như thế nào. Về cái mục tiêu mà chiến lược của trường Đại học Việt Đức, khi mà thành lập trường Đại học Việt Đức thì cái mục tiêu chính giữa hai bên và thảo luận với nhau đó là phía Đức muốn hỗ trợ Việt Nam để có cái trường đại học có chất lượng tốt để đào tạo nguồn nhân lực tốt cho Việt Nam. Cái đó là cái mục tiêu rất sâu xa. Chính vì thế trong quá trình xác định được những cái hạn chế hiện nay của cái hệ thống đào tạo và nhu cầu phát triển của Việt Nam, thì điều này nó đặt ra một cái câu hỏi là vấn đề lớn là trường Đại học Việt Đức phải làm gì, đào tạo cái gì và nghiên cứu ra sao, và mục tiêu ra sao. Thì chính từ đó thì tập trung vào cái vấn đề tức là đào tạo và nghiên cứu ở cái chất lượng cao, và đặc biệt là các cái lĩnh vực khoa học và công nghệ mà thuộc thế mạnh của nước Đức. Đó, của nước Đức. Ví dụ như kỹ thuật, khoa học tự nhiên, hay là có liên quan tới vấn đề high-tech engineering, và cuối cùng kinh tế và quản trị. Đó là cái cách tiếp cận. Và cái nền tảng tiếp cận này đó thì theo cái mô hình đại học nghiên cứu kỹ thuật của Cộng hòa Liên bang Đức mà hồi nãy mà giáo sư Ander mới trình bày về cái đại học Darmstadt đó, thì cái trường đại học Việt Đức này đi tiếp xây dựng trên cái mô hình của trường đại học Darmstadt. Hôm qua mà khi mà ông giáo sư hiệu trưởng có báo cáo về vấn đề về các cái cấu trúc quản trị của trường đại học Việt Đức đó, thì cái đó là xây dựng trên cơ sở kết hợp với cái cơ chế tổ chức và hoạt động của trường đại học Darmstadt, cùng với những cái thảo luận để làm sao nó phù hợp hóa với cái hoàn cảnh luật pháp của Việt Nam. Luật pháp Việt Nam. Và nói về góc độ đào tạo thì một trong những cái điểm rất quan trọng, tức là làm sao chúng ta xây dựng được những cái chương trình đào tạo và bằng cấp được quốc tế công nhận. Cái đây là một trong những cái rất là quan trọng và rất cần thiết. Trong cái phần sau thì tôi sẽ nói thêm, nhưng mà tôi không cái principle.